Hello. Welcome to the first part of the player who can't level up. And first of all, I wanted to say thanks to all of you for your great support. And if you want to support me financially, you can join my Patreon for only $5. My goal is 50 Patreon and then I will become a full-time YouTuber. And special thanks to my first Patreon Zoa C and second Patreon Dale Williams. If you want to support me, Patreon and Discord links are in the description. At beginning of the series we see that, 18 years ago, the tower suddenly appeared, along with the gate. From within it, monsters came pouring out. And finally, the minority of people who awakened superhuman powers. Players. Reborn as the hopes of humanity, the surfaced as a new, powerful force in the world. Player economy. Players have now become the symbol of wealth, subjects of envy, and heroes. And I was not chosen. After that we see that our protagonist is standing at the entrance of a guild office building. Someone says to our protagonist that, "You're here. Please place the food right there on the table." Our protagonist says, "I'm sorry, I'm late. Enjoy your meal." Our protagonist is a delivery boy. He is stopped because of a red light. He a huge billboard of a player. That player's name is Seokwu Yu. He is South Korea's latest hero. 18-year-old, and unique ability retainer. Unique ability users are superhumans among superhumans, who possess unimaginable strength and abilities. Players who are truly monsters. Someone uses car's horns and says, "What are you doing? The lights changed. Move already." Our protagonist says, "I'm sorry." He parks his bike and sees his mailbox is full of mails. He rushes towards the mailbox and checks them. Some of them are for loans, hospital fees, and school fees. He gets disappointed and says, "What was I expecting?" He goes inside his house and says, "I'm home." His sister says, "Oppa, you're back. Welcome home." He asks her, "What are you still doing up?" She says, "Homework." He asks, "Is mom sleeping?" She replies she just fell asleep. She's sleeping more soundly than usual today. He says, "That's good to hear. Oh yeah, did you message mom while I was out?" His sister brings out his 18th birthday cake and whispers, "Happy birthday." He says, "Where'd you get the money to buy a cake? You didn't buy it with the money I gave you to get new clothes with, did you?" She says, "Hey, come on. I've a lot of money, you know. I'm gonna eat it all, if you don't. You know I love chocolate cake, right? I got it from a really famous place." Our protagonist thinks, even though her clothes are all worn out. She says, "I went through a lot of trouble to get." Our protagonist says, "Yu Jong. Thanks, I get to have cake on my birthday, thanks to my little sister, huh?" She says, "Wanna read the letter before the cake, then?" He gets happy, says, "Should I?" "Alright, let's read the letter you've written for me, then." He opened the envelope and surprised to see what's inside. It's a player invitation. He gets so happy and starts to cry and says, I'm a player." His sister starts to cry as well and says, "I wanted to surprise you, so I took it out from the mailbox." She gave him a huge and said, "Congratulations, Oppa." He gets very happy and thinks, I did it. Now our lives are going to be different." He goes into his mom's room and says, "And if I can just manage to get that." After that we see that he is standing in front of the South Korea Players Association. He thinks, "I'm finally, no, this isn't the time to get caught up in my emotions. This is just the beginning." He goes inside the building. A girl says to him, "Welcome, player Gigyu Kim." She says, "If you say info tab, your player information will pop up in front of you. Give it a try." He says, "Info tab." Info tab appears in front of him saying, "Level 1. Unique ability, unknown." He asks her what do the question marks after unique ability mean. She surprised to hear that and says, "Congratulations. You're the retainer of a unique ability. The reason for the question marks is that your ability hasn't manifested yet." He is surprised and happy to hear that and thinks, "I'm really a unique ability retainer. I can't stop shaking." Someone listen to all this. She says, "Please calm down. Your trainer will explain in more detail once he gets here in a moment." Player Seokwu Yu. come to them and says, "Excuse me." Our protagonist thanks player Seokwu-yu. Seokwu-yu says, "If it's not too much to ask, would it be alright if I were to be his guide?" Gigyu Kim is shocked to hear that and says, "Me?" Seokwu says, "Yes, I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but I happened to overhear you conversation. That you're a unique ability retainer." He start to shake again. She says, "Technically, it isn't allowed but we'll let it happen this time. It's no problem, I can just use my authority, so don't worry Mr. Yu. After all, I'm no ordinary manager, I'm a pro manger with over 10 years of experience." He says, "Thank you." Then they go to the portal zone. Gigyu is shocked to see the gate up close and says, "This is the entrance to the tower, the portal." Seokwu says, "Shall we go?" Gigyu reply, "Yep." As they are entering the portal, Seokwu says, "No need to be nervous." Gigyu says, "Okay. There are a lot of goblins are waiting for them." Gigyu says, "Are there always so many monsters on the first floor?" Seokwu says, "I've heard that monsters can stack up due to complications in spawn times, but this is the first time I've seen it happen." Gigyu gets scared and says, "Isn't that a really big problem?" Seokwu bring out his dagger and says, "This actually works out for us. It'll make things easier for me to explain. Do you know about the 100 goblin test?" Gigyu says, "Yeah. The one whose results were accurate, but was banned due to its risk." Seokwu says, "Correct. It was a test designed to gauge the potential of sub-level 10 players. It measured a player's potential from the time it took to hunt 100 goblins without using any skills. He attacks kills a lot of goblins in one move and says, a clear within 4-5 hours, indicated that a player had high potential. 2-3 hours to clear indicated ranker potential, and if one was able to clear with 1 hour, then it was safe to say the player had the potential to be a high ranker." Gigyu sees all this and thinks, incredible. Finally, a unique ability retainer's approximate clear time is 10 minutes. He uses ice skill to kill the monster. Gigyu is shocked to see all this and says, "This is a unique ability retainer, incredible." Seokwu says, 47 seconds. Gigyu run towards him and says, "Wait a second. 10 minutes, when a high ranker takes 1 hour." Seokwu says, "Unique ability retainers are able to catch up in a few months to what a normal player takes several years to accomplish. That's how unimaginable potential of a unique ability retainer is." "Mr. Gigyu, are you familiar with Angela Guild?" Gigyu says, "Yes. The one with the very young ranker is its guildmaster." Seokwu says, "That's right. Most of their members are people who were able to clear the goblin test in under 3 hours. I plan on making the ultimate guild, which transcends the Angela Guild. For that to happen, I need talented players. An especially unique ability retainer like you. I look forward to seeing you in the tower, relentlessly surpassing your own limits until that day arrives. I spoke for a little too long. Shall we begin our first hunt?" Seokwu tell him, "Tighten your legs and hips. And track the goblin's axe with your eyes." He thinks, "I'm going to change it. I'm going to change my life." After that we see that 5 years later, some new players are hunting the goblins. Gigyu is also there hunting the goblins. One of the new players says, "It is the 100 goblin challenge that's tending again." Other one says, "That's what I thought at first, too." Gigyu out of breath and opens his info tab. He gets angry to see his info tab. He says, "I was invited to the tower at the age of 18. He hits the ground and says, "Damn it." Other players are confused to see that. Gigyu says, "And given a unique ability, supposedly a privilege of the chosen. But 5 years have passed since then, and not only does it take me an hour to hunt a single goblin. Who could have guessed that player like me exists? He is still level 1 after 5 years. After that we see that, new player kills some goblins. Gigyu says, "God work, everyone." They say, "You, too, Mr. Guide. Thanks for your hard work." Gigyu says, "Did everyone level up?" One of the new players says, "I think goblins are easy light work for us, now. It doesn't even feel like we caught too many of them, and we've leveled up already." Well, leveling up is quite easy in the beginning. We'll take on the second floor tomorrow, then. I'll see you all at the entrance in the morning. The new player says, yes, sir. They whispers, is he really that famous? Well, he, certainly famous, that's for sure. I've heard of him too. What's he famous for? Someone says, well, there are a few rumors surrounding him. The biggest one is that he's a unique ability retainer. One of them gets surprised and says, whoa, really? He says, well, they're just rumors. If it was real, why would he be here? That's a good point. Another rumor is that he's the lowest ranking of all the players. There are rankings for the bottom of the ladder, too. Nah, that's absurd. It's not like he's a ranker, or anything. Nobody says it out loud, but it's an undeniable fact. That guy, he has a nickname that the players know him by. The dysfunctional leveling player. Gigyu says, I come to this place after I finish my work for the day, as a guide. It's a shabby spot on the first floor that players rarely pass through. A place I found, thanks to spending more time on the lower floors than anyone else. My secret spot. A place where a single goblin spawns, once every day. Gigyu thinks, it'll be an easy hunt. If I can just manage to strike his vitals before he notices me. He walks towards the goblin really slowly. Goblin noticed him and suddenly attack him with his spear. Gigyu blocks it with his sword. Goblin attacks him again and again. He is barely able to block. Gigyu says, damn it. It's going to be a hard fight yet again, today. After that he goes back to player association and thinks it took an hour to hunt one goblin. He says, I got $20 from selling the crystal I acquired from it. If I take out the money I spent on the potions, sigh, I'm left with no profits. Then a guy named Tayo come out of a room. Gigyu says, you're getting off from work now. Tayo says, yep. Gigyu says, you're working late, huh? He says, I'm sorry about what's happened and leaves. He goes inside the room and says, hey, Taeshik. Is something up with Tayo? He is Guide Department Operations Manager Taeshik O. Taeshik says, oh, you're here. Well, you see, the clients you were in charge of today. Tayo's going to be taking over tomorrow. Gigyu is surprised hear that and says, how come? Everything went fine today. Taeshik says, it seems like they heard the rumors. Gigyu says, I don't know what that has to do with being a guide. Well, it can't be helped. It's true, after all. Then a news appears on the TV saying, so, the Angela Guilds declared their intent to take on the 75th floor. Yes, that's correct. They've announced that they will be clearing the 75th floor, whose progress has been stagnated until now. The plan on departing through the gate in Seoul, tomorrow morning. Gigyu says, no matter where you go, it's always about players. Even though they're normal civilians, who'll never even get close to the tower. Taeshik says, well, players are idols of sorts, after all. Since a gate can open anywhere, and there's a chance for anyone to become a player. It's not an unattainable goal, to the people. Gigyu says, not an unattainable goal, huh? And news reporter says, and what's our next piece of news? Other news reporter says, our next piece of news is that an S-ranked gate has opened in America. The US government is currently reported to be planning on reaching out to the Korean Association, and has promised significant compensation to those who will be deployed. Gigyu says, for me, an actual player, it feels so far out of my reach. Gigyu turns off the T versus Taeshik says, why'd you turn it off? I was watching that. Gigyu says, just cuz. Taeshik give him his pay and says, anyways, good work today. Gigyu says, thank you. Taeshik says, and about Tayo. He might seem stoic on the outside, but he feels bad about this, so don't hate him for it. Gigyu smiles and says, it's not his fault. And it's not something he should be sorry about in the first place. Taeshik says, alright, it's important that you come in early tomorrow, to make sure the transfer goes smoothly. It's not much, in its stead, but there's been a job request, asking specifically for you. Gigyu says, for me. Then someone says, my name is Seonpil Kim. Please take good care of me. Yes, it's nice to meet you. I'm Guide Gigyu Kim. He says, I've heard a lot about you from Seokwo. Gigyu says, excuse me, but how are you two acquainted? Seonpil Kim says, we're cousins. Gigyu thinks, thanks, Seokwu. Gigyu says, you're the leader, right, Seonpil? Could you please introduce your team? He introduces all 3 of his team members. They say, we'll be in your care. Gigyu says, now, I'm sure you already know, but for the next 4 days and 5 nights, you will all rapidly be clearing through the tutorial floor. I trust that you've all come prepared, so I'll explain the rest along the way. We'll stop here for today and start setting up camp now. Haenul Kim comes him Gigyu and says, do you need any help? Gigyu says, no, that's okay. Feel free to rest, once you've finished putting up your tent. They all cooks the meal and eat it. Gigyu says, well, the goblins on the first floor are poorly equipped, and their movements are fairly obvious. So just think of it as training for getting used to killing. If you continue to keep your guard up, and work diligently to level up, you'll do fine. As long as you don't meet a guardian, that is. They asks, a guardian. Protectors of each floor that occasionally appear. They're boss monsters that guilds of large parties have to fight, in order to defeat them. To put in terms of gates, they're like gatekeepers, powerful monsters. Though they provide lots of experience points, as well as good items, unless they're on one of the lower floors. They're dangerous enough for even rankers to keep away. But there's no reason to be scared. Their region cycle periods have been determined. And there are guilds who specialize in hunting them. Not to mention that the guardians on the lower floors are taken down quickly. It'll actually be harder to come across one, if we try. Then they reach the 5th floor of the tower. The intersection between the wilderness and the forest. After that we see that, a big goblin is running from something. The stumbles and falls to the ground. A big monster come near him and kills it. After that we see that, they are fighting. Gigyu says, one small mistake can lead to an annihilation on the party. And like it always have been. Then a giant monster appears in front of them guardian. Gigyu says, everybody, get ready. We see that day 2 of the tutorial. 2nd floor of the tower. The orc was waiting for us. Although I was a little intimidated by its huge size. I wasn't as hard as it looked, as it was slower than the goblins. Day 3 3rd floor. Although the orcs and goblins appeared in a group, they weren't intelligent enough to actually work together. The method of the guide, where he started a fight between them with a single pebble, was a masterpiece. The reason why we were able to level up with ease was also because of the guide who chose the safe paths. I think I know why Sok Woohung highly recommended him. Gigyu says, what are you up to? Seonpil says, I'm writing a diary. I've been writing it every day even since I got the invitation. Who knows? Maybe I'll end up writing an autobiography or something when I become a ranker. Gigyu laughs and says, that might happen. If we get through tomorrow, the next up is the test of the 5th floor. I want to get a job quickly. She says, what job would I get? I'm curious as well. The 5th floor. Like before, the goblins and the orcs will move in groups on the 4th floor as well. The difference is that their strength and agility are slightly better. The methods are not much different from yesterday. All the new players are fighting with goblins. He sees dust clouds. This isn't the day where the guardian should be appearing, though. In any case, it's not a good sign. Everybody, we have to get out of here. Wrap it up quickly. There's something I've realized after spending a long time as a guide. The tutorial in reality. They throws the smoke bombs. And starts to run away. This is our only chance to run. Seonpil says, where are we going? First, follow me. I know a place where we can hide. They all get inside a cave to hide. They all are really tired. Seonpil says, what was that just now? It looked like an enormous orc. Gigyu says, it's the guardian of the 4th floor. I don't understand how it appeared, but let's observe the situation first. Thankfully, we have ample food supply, so we should take it slow and wait for rescue. One of them says, Mr. Guide. Haenul isn't waking up. She has been poisoned by goblin poison. Don't worry too much. She'll be fine once we give her some antidote. He checks his bag, but it's not here. Gigyu thinks, although we were in a rush, for me to make such an amateurish mistake. Keep calm. I can't be the one being faltered. He says, everyone. I'll go outside and send a rescue signal. Seonpil says, what? It's too dangerous. Don't worry, I've gone around the tutorial floors until I got sick of them. I'm just going to go to the hills and shoot the flare. I know I don't look like much. But I'm the best level 1 in the world. He thinks, was what I said but because the movement paths of the monster were all changed due to the appearance of Guardian, it's hard to predict where they'll be at. Let's give up on this route and look for another path. If anything happens, I've got one smoke bomb left as well. With this speed, I'll reach the hill that I'm aiming for in 3 minutes. I'll quickly just shoot the flare and return to the cave. I just have to not run into the Guardian. Then suddenly a Guardian appears behind him. The Guardian hits him with a strong attack. He get hurt so bad and thinks, of all things, I must get away quickly. I'm not someone who'll fall for the same tricks twice. First, I must make as much distance between it and myself. Keep calm, there's no one else that knows this place better than you do. There's definitely going to be a way. He reaches the 5th floor of the test, the door that I wanted to jump into, giving up on everything. But couldn't because of my family. A place where death is the only thing that's waiting for a level 1 like me. Why did I come here? A guy who can't even handle the 4th floor, going to the 5th floor. I've run into a dead end. The Guardian appears behind him, starts to run toward him. He thinks certain death and uncertain death. There's still a choice. Let's have a look. He opens the door in SYS, let's have a look. On what's behind those high door. Then he hears someone saying, you have entered the first test. Checking player information. You have met the requirements. Unconfirmed ability discovered. You have met the conditions. Difficulty is being significantly lowered. He is in a huge Greenland. A message popped up in front of him saying, the first test, hunt the goat. He kills the goat. Then a lot of messages popped up saying, you have passed the test. Job determined. Unconfirmed ability discovered. Reward will be distributed. Perfect clear. Quality of reward has been increased. He surprised to see that and thinks, I came in prepared to die. But it's just a goat. Is this really it? Then some darkness appears and covers him. He hears someone saying, what are you? He is confused to hear that. He looks around and thinks, where am I? The voice says, are you my master? He thinks it's little boy's voice. Gigyu says, master. Little boy says, damn it, this idiot who can't even answer a question is my master. Gigyu gets angry and says, what are you talking about? Little boy says, I waited so long for this, too. Whatever, just choose a name for me, already. Gigyu asks, a name? Little boy says, yes, a name. I'm telling you to link with me. Ego has requested to link with you. Do you choose to accept the link request? Please choose a name for Ego. After that he wakes up in a hospital bed. His sister and guide department head are also there waiting for him to wake up. As soon as he wakes up his sister says, are you alright? Gigyu says, nurse, I already pressed the bell. It's been 2 weeks since I was found unconscious at the door of the 5th floor. And I was able to hear what happened then, from Taeshik. The players of the guild who saw the flare signal were able to corner the Guardian that had been going berserk at the door to the 5th floor. But the Guardian managed to get away. It bothers me that they weren't able to catch the Guardian, but seeing that Seonpil's party was able to be rescued, safe in one place as well, put heart at ease. His calls him, he says, they said I'll be okay to leave the hospital after a few more tests. Hey, what are feeling sorry for? I'm not a kid, don't worry about me and relax. The insurance took care of the hospital fees too. So don't worry at all. Of course. I know, safety first. Yujing's listening right next to you, right? Yujing, you don't have to come anymore, so take care of mom at home. Okay mom, I'll let you know when my discharge date is finalized. Even after clearing the 5th floor. Against my hopes, I am still level 1. Then a snake ring appears on his finger. But now, then we see that a lot of players are fighting with goblins in front of the gate. He enters the gate. All the players starts to look towards him. They starts to talk to each other saying, is he really that famous? Yeah, I'm telling you. What's he so famous for? Well, you know the rumors about the guide who can't level up. Hey, that's old news. Don't you know he's famous for something else now? What is it? The tutorial slaughterer. He is on the 4th floor. There are a lot of monster running toward him to attack. He bring out a black sword out of his ring. He gets ready to attack with a smile. He kill a lot of them. With a long chain of attacks. He jump and swings his sword, splitting the ground into two. He thinks back when little boy asks him for name. He names him Lu. Little boy says, I like it. He cuts a lot of monsters' head with a single swing of his sword. His info tabs appears in front of him saying, Name, Gigyu Kim. Level 1. Job, Ego's partner. Unique ability, Link, can link with Ego. Skill, Synchronize, can become integrated with linked Ego, and use the Ego's abilities. Then Lu's info tab opens says, Level 7. Strength, 18. Dexterity, 18. Stamina, 7. Magic ability, 7. Skill, Accessorize. Lu's level increases to 8. Gigyu checks his bag full of crystals and says, It feels just like yesterday, that I was shaking over 1 or 2 orcs. Now it feels like more work for me to collect these crystals. Right, Lu. He thinks of 1 month ago. He is standing in middle of the forest. He checks his info tab. He says, Ego's partner. He thinks, I knew it wasn't a dream. Good thing I decided to come to the tower as soon as I was discharged. He thinks of his sister saying, What? You just got back after nearly dying, and you want to go where, now? He thinks although I'll probably get scolded by Yujing once I get home. I can't just do nothing, when my info tab has changed for the first time in 5 years. How do I link with this ego thing anyways? He thinks of something and says, could it be? He points his hand downwards and say link up. But nothing happened. He sits down and says, oops. My shoes untied. He gets embarrassed, sits down and says, I was too excited. Thank goodness people don't come here often. He says, just how do I use this thing? I even gave that bratty voice a name. Lu. He hears the sound saying, formless ego, Lu has been summoned. Lu's appearance has not been formed. He gets excited and says, it worked. The sound says, Lu's appearance will be chosen at random, due to players' lack of ability. Ingredients for Lu's materialization will be automatically absorbed. He says, ingredients. Absorbed. What's that supposed to meant? All of his clothes and bags gets absorbed. He says, is it over? The Lu turns into a sword. He says, well, you're saying you're Lu, right? Lu says, yes, geez. How many times are you going to make me repeat myself? Idiot. He slapped himself and says, stay calm. Anyways, what's an ego? Is it like a soul? Lu says, I am not a soul. Gigyu says, then what? Lu gets angry and says, I dunno, idiot. Before that, stop touching me. You damn perv. Gigyu says, Lu, can you move by yourself? Lu says, I can't yet, but I probably will be able to in the future. Gigyu says, how about breaking links by yourself and switching masters? Lu says, that's up to the master. The ego has no control over that. Gigyu acts like a baby and says, ooh, then next question. Once you become able to move later, can you harm me? Lu says, attacking you is possible, but if you die, your linked ego will also disappear, so it's highly impractical. Oh really? Last question, then, do you feel pain, too? Lu says, of course. I am a distinguished ego. That is, I can feel all emotions, and if chosen in the settings, all sensations, too. Gigyu picks up a rock. Lu says, what is it? Then a message popped saying, will you turn on Lu's pain perception? Gigyu start to hit him with the rock and says, manners. After that we see that he cuts the an orc in two. A message popped up saying, Lu is absorbing the blood of the orc. Lu has acquired experience points. Lu has leveled up. Lu's stats have increased. Gigyu says, looking back, I guess there was a time when Lu rebelled a lot. Nostalgic. Lu laughs and says, what an embarrassing memory, master. When I think back to then, I still get chills. Gigyu looks towards Lu with anger and says, what? Lu gets scared and says, a chill master. I said I feel blessed to be with such a chill master. Gigyu says, I thought so. My bag's almost full. Let's head back down for tonight. Lu says, it feels good going out, master. Gigyu says, yeah. Then next time, instead of the tower, let's try going into a gate. Then they get back to player association where Taeshik says to him, don't go into any gates for the time being. Gigyu says, why not? Taeshik says, 4 high rankers have died recently in a gate in the US. And there's been several cases where gates that were supposed to be rank F were rank C. Or gates turn out to have weird constructions and architectures. This has never happened before in 23 years, but it started a month ago. Gigyu thinks, a month ago is when I met Lu. Nah, no way. Taeshik says, I'm not telling you to avoid them forever. I'm not telling you to avoid them forever, I am just saying it's best to stay away from danger. I know how you must feel, finally being able to use your unique ability, but just stay put for a little bit. Gigyu says, alright. Thanks for looking out for me. Yep, good work out there, get home safely, now. Tutorial slaughter. Gigyu gets angry and says, hey, cut it out. High concentration crystals, special items, clear bounties. The gates are much more lucrative than the tower. Gigyu thinks Taeshik told me not to, but I don't have a choice, with all these loans, not to mention I can barely afford to pay back the interests. The odds of a gate being an anomaly are low. What's the worst that can happen? He presses call looking for members gate near Guri City. Then he goes to a coffee shop to meet the party leader. Party leader says, nice to meet you. My name is Songsu Ha, and I'll be the part leader for the expedition. Gigyu says, I'm Gigyu Kim, I contacted you earlier. Songsu says, you said this is your first time gate hunting, right? Gigyu says, yes, I'm still familiar with strategies, and such. Songsu says, here's the contract. But things like profit distribution and breach of contract fees are quite standard. You'll see once you read it. We'll meet at Guri Station at 2 o'clock, in 2 days. Oh, and obviously, don't be late. Gigyu says, gates can generally be categorized into 2 groups. One-time gates, which disappear after they're cleared, and sustained gates, which do not disappear, allowing for repeated hunting. Though the rewards from sustained gates are incomparable to the former, which provide many special rewards. Many people look to clear these instead, due to their much lower risks which are the result of publicly released clear strategies. The party leader says, alright, if we're all finished checking our gear, let's get going. He looks the other players and says, they all seem awkward, did they all come here through the employment site, like me? Those two seem to know each other. One of them says, hold your positions. They're coming. Then a lot of zombies comes running toward them. Tanker runs up ahead and stops the zombies. Dealer run towards the zombies. Lu says, let's kill them all. Archer attacks the zombies. And sword users start to cut down the zombies. One of them says, they're so needlessly sturdy, especially when they've been rotting away. The Gigyu goes running up ahead of everyone, killing all the zombies in his way. All the other party members are shocked to see his power. Tank says, wow, looks like this is going to be a fast clear thanks to you, Gigyu. Other one says, didn't you say you're level 7? I feel like I'm getting carried. Gigyu says, it's just luck. Tank says, nah, you're just being humble. They say, you had the largest contribution in taking down the mini-boss back there, too. We see a flashback where Gigyu cuts down the hand of giant zombie. Tank says, let me join your parties from now, after we clear this. Gigyu thinks, luckily, he doesn't seem to mind, but it isn't polite to be acting like this in front of the party leader. Party leader says, alright, everyone. Let's get going again. Gigyu says, Lu, you ready? Lu says, zombie blood is no good, master. Gigyu says, we'll be at the boss room soon, so just hang on for a bit. After that they are standing in front of a cage. Gigyu says, are these massive steel bars meant to keep the boss monster trapped inside? Party leader says, now, then. I'll be explaining the clear method for the gatekeeper Talon. First of all, Talon is an enormous ghoul. Tank says, aw, man. You think we didn't research all of this, coming into a sustained gate? Let's hurry up and go, we're wasting time. Party leader says, listen again, even if you know it. One person's mistake could endanger the entire group inside a gate. Tank says, what a drag. Girl with party leader gets angry. Party leader stops her. Party leader says, I'll keep explaining, then. Gigyu sees all that and thinks, that was weird, just now. Party leader says, once we melt the steel bars with acid, and enter the boss room. Talon will be sitting, with his back turned against us. They says, he's a lot bigger than I imagined. He says, first, I'll damage him with an explosive arrow. After that he shoots an explosion arrow at him, which will cause an angry Talon to start flailing his fists around. Ghoul screams and starts to attack. He says, our tanker, Byung-hoon Song, must block those attacks for us. Tank gets blown away. The most important part is when he hunches over to change his attack pattern. Gigyu and the other party member starts to cut him down. Party leader says, his defense will increase threefold, preventing most attacks from having any effect on him. As Ghoul hides blocks their attacks, party leader says, Gigyu now's your chance. He says Gigyu now. But with Gigyu's attacks, should at least be able to damage him. Even just a little. Gigyu jumps to attack him. Then he hears the sound says, synchronization rate with Lu has increased. You are now able to use Lu's abilities more effectively. He defeats the ghoul with a single attack. They are shocked to see that. Then a message popped up saying, Gatekeeper Talon has been defeated. Acquiring experience points. You have killed the Gatekeeper in a single strike. Acquiring bonus experience points. Your stats have increased slightly due to Talon's blood. You have acquired skill Cannibalism. Cannibalism, recover health by devouring corpses. All the other party members gets excited says, can I get your contact info? Gigyu says, we can talk about that later. Party leader says, everyone, please listen up. An equipment item, Dagger of Paralysis have dropped. One of them says, not only did we clear it easily, but there's an equipment item drop too. Party leader says, as outlined by the contract, I will now roll the dice to determine reward distributions. Tank says, hey, Gigyu. Don't you wanna have that dagger? Gigyu thinks, he keeps talking down to me. Tank has an evil look on his and he says, if we're being hones, you basically did all the work, didn't you? Deo and I will take care of it, so just play along. Tank thinks, there's no way, Gigyu will ignore us after this, right? I'll scratch you back, you scratch Min. Gigyu thinks, after being a guide for 5 years, I've developed an eye for people. Dealer Deo Choi and tanker Byung-hoon Song. My expectations were low, but to think they'd try something like this. On the other hand, party leader Song Soo-ha, and the girl whose name I don't know. Party leader says, if you're all ready, shall we begin? Gigyu says, I have no idea. It does seem like they have something hidden up their sleeve, though. Party leader says, I'll take out the dice now. Tank jumps to attack the party leader. As he is about to stab party leader, Gigyu grabs his hand and stops him. Tank says, Gigyu, I thought we were on the same side. Tank think, if I move hastily now, I might die. In that case, hey Deo, do something. Deo gets scared and don't move at all. Gigyu thinks that was close. He could have died. Not party leader Song Soo-ha, but this tanker. I didn't even see her take out her dagger. Isn't she a magician? How dangerous. Song Soo's no different. He didn't even flinch when a knife was flying at his throat. Rather, he was watching the knife, instead. He says, just who are you guys? Party leader says, we'd like to ask you that ourselves, actually. Gigyu says, what do you want to do with these guys? Deo gets scared and says, he said that I'd get paid as long as I'd get paid, as long as I did as I was told. I didn't know he was trying to stab you. Really? Party leader says, why are you asking me that? Well, you were their target, after all. Party leader says, harem. She jumps toward Deo and hit him behind his neck. Gigyu thinks, she's dangerous, as I expected. He says, well anyways, I'll be taking this dagger. Party leader says, why's that? Gigyu picks up the dagger and says, well, I basically saved your life, so I'm thinking it should be fine for me to have this. Party leader says, I think that's a little much. Gigyu says, an item of this caliber isn't much to someone like you, is it? Party leader says, do you know who I am? Gigyu says, well, if you have someone like that as your bodyguard, it means you're no ordinary person. I have no interest in either of you, nor will I try to find out, or blabber about you. I'll leave taking care of these two in your hands. I'm gonna hunt for a little longer before I head back. Lu says, that girl called Harem is dangerous. I know. That's why I only talked with them. Should I have run away or something? Lu says, talk. You know they're dangerous, and yet you let unconscious people behind with them. And ripped off equipment from them, too. Gigyu says, well, I saved his life, after all. And it's thanks to that we can stay behind and farm like this. How do you feel? Do you feel like you have two ears? A message popped up saying, you have absorbed the zombie's stamina. Lu says, Master, I am an ego. And again, zombie blood is no good. Gigyu says, alright, we'll get out of here. There are no more zombies, and we've absorbed enough blood, anyways. Gigyu says, Lu absorbs stats through blood. Dexterity from goblins, strength from orcs, and stamina from zombies. So his stats are higher than what they should be at his level. Let's just stop by the rewards room before we leave. He says, rewards room. A limbo space, only accessible though the gatekeeper's corpse. As its name suggests, it's where the rewards for clearing the gate are given. A wall in front of him starts to glow. He says, hey Lu. Lu says, what is it? Gigyu says, was there something like this here before? Lu says, no there wasn't. He knocks the wall and says, right. The inside looks hollow. What do you say, we break it? Lu says, I agree master. Then suddenly Lu feels something and says, wait but it's too late. Gigyu says, this dust is no joke. What did you say, Lu? Lu says, ego. Gigyu is confused to hear that. Lu says, I can sense another ego here. An ego, in a place like this. How's that possible? Are egos that common? What have I been doing for 5 years, then? That's because Master is an idiot. As Lu is about to says, idiot, Gigyu says, what? Lu says, nothing, Master. Just look for the ego. It's here, somewhere. This gate's too old, I doubt there's anything left, much less a hidden piece. Lu says, I'm telling you, I think there's an ego here. There is a beautiful white sword in middle of the room. Gigyu comes near the sword and says, what's this, Excalibur, or something? I should grab it, right? As soon as he grabs the white sword, a bright yellow light covers the room. This time he hears little girl's sound saying, are you my master? Gigyu thinks a space filled with pure white. Similar to when I met Lu, but it feels different. He says, are you the ego contained in the sword? Ego says, I've been waiting here for a master. Will you respond to my calling? Gigyu says, I'm not you master yet, but I'd like to be. Ego says, then please, choose a name for me. He says, L. From now on you name is L. He takes out the sword. Gigyu says, I didn't feel as unfamiliar this second time, since I already experienced it once. Then the roof of the room starts to crumble. Lu says, run boss. L also says, master, you must flee. He says, I know. Lu is confused to hear another ego and says, who are you? L says, who's asking? Lu says, I am the great distinguished ego. Gigyu says, bot of you quiet. He the Talon's corpse and think, I've got to move to the rewards room. Then the floor starts to crumble as well. He jumps toward the Talon's corpse and says, please. He hears the system says, do you wish to move to the rewards room? He says, quick. Then a huge eyeball appears in front of him and also a gate appears in front of him as well. And after the news says, a sustained gate was demolished. No precedent. Cause unknown. Gigyu thinks, the timing of the freak accident overlapping with the timing of mass GAT formations caused great debate for a while. On the bright side, because the gate collapsed why after I left, I was not regarded as a suspect. Its clear rewards were 30 Jolit crystals and an addition reward, Charm of Protection. Then we see that there are 7 different type of crystals. He says, a valuable item that prevents common illnesses and increases longevity, and can be used even by ordinary people. Though it isn't enough to cure my mother's illness, it's helpful. And the money I received from selling the crystals allowed me to move her into a hospital, making me feel a little better. He says, after deciding to climb the tower once again. He goes to the 5th floor. He thinks, wow. I did hear that the floor of test was quite developed, due to the absence of monsters, but this is basically a normal city. And progressed past the 5th floor, where I had been found unconscious, as well as the 6th floor. On the 6th floor he is fighting with the lizard man using both of the egos. And on the 7th floor he is fighting with highly equipped goblins. On the 8th floor he is fighting with some highly equipped lizard men. And he clears the 9th floor as well. He thinks I couldn't even dream of coming here, until recently. Then we see a flashback where Seokwu told him, your level itself isn't actually what's important. Because as long as you don't give up, your unique ability will eventually manifest. He thinks Seokwu was right. He says, L's leveled up quite a bit, too. Because of the shared experience, leveling up is a little slower, but, thanks to synchronization, I can definitely feel myself growing stronger. I thought it would be incredibly powerful, because it supposedly had a demon sealed within it, but L says, the demon was sealed within me for so long that all the power has dissipated. About the demon I'm sorry, I just don't remember. Gigyu says, was the demon that giant eye? Well, it seems for sure I can grow more powerful, the more egos I have. I guess I've gotta look for more egos. Lu says, and you know where to look. Gigyu says, I know a place. He goes to the auction house, where items are being sold for hundreds of thousands. Gigyu says, you sense anything? Lu and L says, not yet. Gigyu thinks I should have known. There's no way egos are so summoned. Then the last item of the day and the main item of this auction. The bracelet of the wounded appears. Someone in audience says, whoa. That's the item that's supposed to shoot your regeneration up. Lu and L both say, ego. He says, what? After that the auction ends. He comes out of the building. I didn't know auctions are so tiring. And why's everything so expensive? L says, there was no way around it since it was the main item, too, master. Lu says, master poor. He smiles and says, well, at least the dagger of paralysis, sold for a whopping $100,000. Lu says, master, expression. Weird. Lu, L, let me give you a kiss. Lu says, are you crazy? L says, master. Gigyu get a call from Tishik and says, yes, I'm on my way home now. Tishik says, any problems? Nope, I don't have any. Oh, there is just one. It's hard to find a party. I got back from a gate a while ago, and the players were a bigger problem than the monsters. Tishik says, what? You went into a gate? I told you to be careful for the time being. Gigyu says, an F-ranked gate, F rank. You know I'm just a level 1 without my equipment. I can't get a player ranking, which means I can't do solo raids. I know there's nothing I can do about it. Yep, I'll see you soon. Oh. Don't forget, you told me you'd take me out to eat to celebrate your promotion. Gigyu says, it's not like I don't enjoy climbing the tower, but Lu has to absorb blood as well, so the pace is slow. And the rewards from the gate last time were good, too. I'm sure it'll work out one way or the other. Well, I've taken care of everything that's urgent. And I'm able to buy beef to eat, so. L says, how humble of you, even after acquiring such a large sum of money. Lu says, more like stingy. Gigyu says, Lu, how has it been since we beat some sense into you, again? Lu says, my apologies. Giggy says, anyways, I want to earn a lot of money and move somewhere else, as soon as possible. I'd like for Yujung to be able to walk around more safely, too. As Gigyu was walking home, suddenly a gate appears in front of him. He thinks, a gate. After that we see the Tishik promoted to Gate Supervision Department head. Tishik says, let's see, it's near Gigyu's house. The report was made by He gets surprised to see the name of who reported the gate and says, Gigyu Kim. Someone says to Gigyu, in the event you do not enter the gate within 5 days, your rights to clear the gate will forfeited, and auctioned. There are other conditions aside from this, too. So please keep that in mind. Thank you again for your fast report. Tishik says to Gigyu, let's have a talk. Gigyu says, okay. Tishik says, it just so happens to be an F-ranked gate, you plan on clearing it, right? Are you confident? Gigyu says, yep. Come on, now. You shouldn't underestimate me, I'm a lot stronger now. Tishik says, well I don't know about that, but I know you're stubborn, that's for sure. Which floor are you at now? Gigyu says, the 11th, I cleared the 10th today. Tishik and you level. Gigyu says, you know already. Tishik says, 4 days. Finish your preparation within 4 days. And then come to me. Gigyu says, why? Tishik says, I wanna see if you'll be okay to go in. If you're not well prepared, I won't let you go, no matter what. After that, we see that, 4 days later. Gigyu says, I didn't know something like this existed in our building basement. Tishik says, it's a training room. It just isn't used much these days. Gigyu thinks, space expansion. With protective barrier around the walls, too. I guess I've been underestimating the association. Tishik says, what do you think? Does this spark your interest at all? Having a position within the association. Tishik says, I don't think it'd be bad for you to join as an agent, of some other position, now. Gigyu says, thanks for the offer, but I'm going to have to refuse. I don't want to settle down anywhere quite yet. Tishik says, is that so? Well, you'll always be welcome here, so just say the word. Gigyu says, what about Tayo? The guide department disappeared when you got promoted, didn't it? Tishik says, the Caravan Guild. I think that's where he's a completely different person than the stoic kid I knew. Gigyu says, that's great. I'll have to meet up with him sometime. I've never heard of that guild before, though. Tishik get ready to fight. Gigyu says, but hey, you said we're sparring. Aren't you going to get a weapon? Tishik says, what? Geez. It seems like you're looking down on me because I've been too busy just doing office work these days. Tishik release a huge mana wave. Tishik says, once any expert, always an expert. Don't underestimate a former high ranker. Tishik get angry and says, stop messing around, and being it on. Gigyu says, I know I can't beat him. I'll be learning a thing or two, then. But I won't go down without a fight. Tishik jumps to kick him. Gigyu brings out Luan barely able to block it. Tishik says, are you sure you came prepared? Gigyu thinks, I guess a high ranker's a high tanker after all. This reminds me of Seokwu. Tishik gets angry and says, focus. Letting you guard down in the gate is the same as dying. Gigyu thinks, he's right. I was too cocky. But I didn't come without a plan. After that we see that, 4 days ago. Dongdaemun District Player Item Auction Market. Lu says, item. What for? There are no items better than us, boss. Gigyu is pretending to be on the phone and says, it's not like that. I don't have any good armor at all. I can't just go around like this forever. And who knows, maybe I'll find an ego. L says, I will let you know as soon as I sense one nearby master. Alright, let's go look around. He looks around for the armors and finds some good armors. But is shocked to see the prices are too high. He is sitting depressed on a bench in a park. Gigyu says, the cheap ones are disgustingly bad, and the good ones are disgustingly expensive. This isn't easy. Then we see that a kid and adult are arguing with each other. Kid says, that's not true. My grandpa's an amazing artisan. Adult says, what's so amazing about equipment whose information doesn't even pop up? Kid says, you're wrong. My grandpa's really good. Adult says, what's the point in advertising a store that won't even do business properly? Even if I go, I'll just get kicked out again. Gigyu comes to Kid and says, hey, kid. Will you lead the way for me? To your grandpa's store. Kid gets excited and says, yes. They goes inside a basement of a building. Gigyu says, Lu, L. Are you sure? They says, no doubt. Lu says, the clothes that kid has on. they're all egos. L says, it's artificially made by human, but it partially wields the strength of an ego, for certain. Lu says, stop saying what I wanna say, damn it. Kid says, Grandpa, I brought a customer. His grandpa says, Minsu, didn't Grandpa tell you not to bring guests? Kid says, but I want everyone to know about you, Grandpa. Grandpa says, you have lots of nice kavas, too. Why are you wearing the one I made? Your father would be pissed if he saw. L and Lu says, everything in here, they're all egos. L says, no way. How can a human? Lu says, they're all missing a pair. They're all egoless egos. Gigyu says, isn't ego also ego in English? Kid's grandpa says, I have nothing to sell you, so just leave. I don't have any plans on selling to someone who doesn't even know their value. This isn't the first time I've met guys like you who can't even appreciate my work. His grandpa's name is Jichul Wong Blacksmith. Gigyu says, I'll buy. Jichul says, I told you I'm not selling. Guys like you won't be able to use them anyways. Gigyu says, if I can use them, will you sell them to me? Jichul says, don't be ridiculous and just leave. Gigyu says, nameless sword. Level 79. Abilities are. Jichul is surprised to hear that and says, don't tell me. You can see that sword's abilities. Gigyu says, of course, you can as well, right sir? Jichul says, oh my. Then go ahead and try using it. To have a person who knows the value of their weapon, wield it. That is a blacksmith's greatest wish. Gigyu named the sword Sharpness. He is not able to use the sword even after naming it. L says, it looks like it didn't like the name. Gigyu says, is that why? Then we get back to Gigyu and Tishik fighting. Gigyu jumps with super speed to attack Tishik. He swings the sword with full power, but Tishik deflects in with ease. Tishik gets angry and says, I still see your hesitation at the tip of your sword. Aim for the vital spot with all your strength. Do you think you'll be able to even put a scratch on me like this? Gigyu thinks my opponent is a former high ranker. Concentrate. He swings his swords left and right. Tishik dodges all his attacks with ease. And come behind him and punch him. Gigyu uses sword to block it. They block and dodge each other attacks again and again. Then we see as Tishik's punch is about to hit Gigyu. We see a flashback. Where Gigyu says, why can't I link with any of them? Is this really an ego? Lu says, these guys are second rate. Not only that, but egos are usually super picky about their owners. It couldn't be helped with L and me, but don't think that all of them will be like us. L says, I like you master. Gigyu says, I'll try one last time. Then he grabs an armor and says, your name is Brunhart. A message popped up saying, you've linked with ego, Brunhart. Gigyu says, it worked. Partner lacks the abilities to wield it, so not all the abilities can be used. Brunhart loses most of its abilities. Then a message popped up saying, Brunhart level 7. After that system says, reflecting damage accumulated by Brunhart. Tishik's punch hits Gigyu in the stomach. He goes flying and hits the wall. Tishik throws a healing potion toward him. It's a potion for internal injuries. Gigyu sits against the wall and says, seriously? My hands are shaking so I can't even open it. Tishik says, you pass. Gigyu says, what? I'm telling you, you passed. I didn't think you'd actually be able to give me a scratch, but. Tishik thinks when his punch was about to hit Gigyu he smiled. A thoroughly planned strategy that wasn't a coincidence. Was it me who took this too lightly? Tishik says, what was that earlier? Gigyu says, it's from my item, of course. Tishik says, if the gate isn't cleared a week from today, then the association will send their agents. Now then, I wish you the best of luck in clearing the gate. I'm giving you 5 days, not a week. If you don't come out within that time, I forget the agents, I'm going to go in myself and dart you out. Gigyu says, you don't need to. Tishik says, it's cheaper than paying for the agent's travel expenses. Lu says, isn't this similar in level to the one with the zombies? Why is he making such a fuss? Gigyu thinks he's like a father to me. He's probably just worried. Gigyu says, I'll be back. Tishik says, okay. Gigyu enters the gate. System says, you have entered the gate. Gigyu says, I hope it's a sustained gate. Lu says, and what's good about that? Gigyu says, I can earn a lot of money. Lu says, how do you know if it's a sustained gate or not? Gigyu says, I have to clear it first. Gigyu says, since this is an F rank, there's a high chance of it being the difficult tower or basement gate. As long as it isn't, then I'll be able to clear it quickly. Gigyu bring out Lu and says, well anyways. Then he kills a wolf. Gigyu says, let's end the small talk for now. Then a lot of wolf appears from the darkness. He says, it's time to level up. Gigyu is killing a lot of wolf. Lu absorbs the blur wolf's blood. And L leveled up. A wolf is about to bite him, he smiles. System says, reflecting damage accumulated by Brunhart. A huge explosion happens, with kills a lot of wolves. Gigyu says, let's take a break for now. Lu says, humans. L says, you're being rude to the master. Gigyu checks his watch and says, it's been around 5 hours. Gigyu says, is it because it's an F rank? There isn't much a difference between the orcs. If anything, it feels easy. Still, with my position, it would have been hard for me to enter on my own, but I got lucky this time. I feel like I'll definitely need a player rank, but a player's rank is measured without any equipment. If I'm more than a certain distance away from my ego, then I'll have level 1 abilities. There's no way I could get a proper evaluation. L says, once master's abilities advance, no matter how far apart we are, you should be able to maintain the link. Gigyu says, I hope so, but I don't even know what I'm supposed to do to advance. Lu says, ego leech. Gigyu hits Lu with one of his fingers. Gigyu says, I'll hit you. Lu says, you hit me already. Gigyu says, well, in addition to not knowing how to advance. I don't get this either. We see that Lu level is 17 and his skills are accessorize, cannibalism. Gigyu says, cannibalism. This is that, right? Eating one's own kind. Could it be that you? Lu says, are you crazy human? Gigyu gets up and says, I'm joking. I've rested enough now, so time to go. Gigyu thinks, my bag is already full to the brink. Should I buy a bag with enlargement magic placed on it? Gigyu sees buff potions and says, if I drink these I should have more space. I need buffs anyways. All his stats go up by 5 as many times he drinks a potion. Lu says, feel the strongest energy within this gate. The boss is probably there. Gigyu says, I know. That's why I'm drinking these. Gigyu says, am I almost there? At this rate, I'll lose all the effects from the potions I drank earlier. L says, I feel a strong energy from somewhere near B. Lu says, I'm certain that we're almost there. Gigyu says, there's light. We must be almost there like L said. Lu says, I'm the one who said it. Gigyu says, shush, quiet down. Lu says, no one can hear us anyways. Gigyu says, ah, right. L says, Lu, stop being rude to master. Lu says, Min, own business. How pretentious. A presence that feels as if it has swallowed more than half of the gate's power. Unlinked talent, who had been attacked countless times. This one has the true dignity of a gatekeeper. There is a giant wolf standing in front of him. Lu says, wow, that's impressive. L says, be careful, master. Gigyu feel a lot of pressure and thinks, pressure that is leagues above talents. So this is a real boss monster. Boss runs toward Gigyu, with super speed. Gigyu stops him with his swords. He hits the boss with a powerful attack on the face. Gigyu thinks, it's shallow. Wolf gets really angry and hits Gigyu with a powerful attacks. Gigyu goes flying, and stops himself using his swords. Gigyu thinks, his defense is stronger than I lose. I have no choice but to have it slowly accumulate damage. Gigyu smiles and thinks, not bad. Gigyu thinks of himself fighting with the goblins. And says, fighting a tough opponent is actually my specialty. Gigyu jumps and ready to attack. Boss dodges his attack. Boss attacks Gigyu. Gigyu blocks the attack with his swords. Gigyu hits the boss with a lot of attack. And he also gets a lot of hits at same time. After that we see that Gigyu has beaten the boss Wold. He's sitting and thinks, that was a close call. Gigyu says, the effects from the buff potions were almost up, and if I didn't have Brunhart, I would have lost. I can't even compare talent to him. Gigyu says thanks to Wolf and says, thanks, for dying by my hands. A message popped up saying, "You've defeated the gate's boss, Changkyung. You've gained experience." Lu absorbs Changkyung's blood. Lu gained an agility stat from absorbing Changkyung's blood. Lu gained a skill from absorbing Changkyung's blood. Strong will, stamina recovers at a rapid pace when dealt with damage that is difficult to withstand. System says, cannibalism has been activated. Gigyu is surprised to see all the messages. After that we see that, a big mouth appears behind Gigyu and eats the boss wolf. A message popped up saying, Lu has absorbed Changkyung. You have successfully transformed Changkyung into an ego. A blue magic crystal appears. He grabs it and says, "What's going on?" Lu says, "I don't know either. I've never heard of turning a monster into an ego." Gigyu says, "Well, I guess it would be faster for me to look into it." He says, "What about you, L?" L says, "I'm the same. I'm sorry I can't be of any help, master." Gigyu says, "Really?" Lu says, "Why did you only something to me?" Gigyu says, "Ego transformation. Does that mean Lu has Changkyung's ego?" Lu says, "No, I don't have anything." Gigyu says, "Then what's going on?" L doesn't have this skill to begin with, so he opened his information window. His level is still 1, his acquired ego is Changkyung. Gigyu says, "I have it. How do I use this? Do I have to yell the skill name?" He thinks about earlier and says, "I'll try it later. I'll know when the time comes." Lu and L are confused. Gigyu says, "We were able to check the usefulness of cannibalism and I was able to get my hands on a blue crystal that's 1 rank above a purple crystal. And for a size like this, I can get a pretty good price for it. Now time to go to the reward room." He looks around and says, "It's not here." Lu and L asks, "What's wrong, master?" Gigyu thinks, "To go into the reward room I have to touch the gatekeeper's body, but..." He starts to yell really loudly and says, "Lu ate Changkyung's corpse." Lu says, "Why is it always me? Inside the gate where the sun never sets." He did a full-fledged search from day 2. Lu says, "Do you really have to find it? Aren't you wasting time?" L says, "Going outside to get some help could be one method." Gigyu says, "I can't do that. If there's an anomaly like last time at the Guri City gate, then they'll start questioning me. And if I can't find a way to clear it, even if I go outside, then a gate break will occur and there'll be a lot of casualties. I have to finish what I started. I think I'm the cause, so I have to figure out a way no matter what." L says, "I'm moved by master's sense of responsibility." Lu says, "That's a nice way to put it, but aren't you just saying that you'll clean up the mess you made?" Gigyu gets angry and says, "Be quiet. Tisik Hung will come after 4 days, so we'll be able to avoid the worst case scenario." Lu says, "That human was definitely impressive." Gigyu say, "Of course it would be best if we could resolve this before then." On day 3, he searched all over the meadow but he couldn't find anything. Gigyu says, "Should we just kill off all the remaining monsters?" L says, "I think that's a good idea, master." Lu says, "I think that's too simple, but it isn't a bad idea." They went through the tunnels that they had purposely avoided before one by one. Gigyu kill a lot of monster pretty easily. They wiped the remaining blue wolves. On day 5, we see that Gigyu has killed the last wolf and says, "This should be the last one." L says, "Good work, master." Gigyu says, "What now? Tisik Hung should be here soon. Do I have to break the cave or something?" L and Lu says, "All of the gate's energy is gathering in one place." Gigyu is surprised and says, "What? And where is that?" Lu says, "Where the gatekeeper was." L says, "The meadows." After that we see that back in the world. Tisik says to Gigyu, "If you came out an hour later I would have gone in." Gigyu laughs and says, "That was close." Tisik says, "Why were you so late? I thought with your skills you should have been able to finish it in 2 days." Gigyu says, "To tell you the truth, I defeated the keeper on the first day. But there was a problem, so." Tisik says, "A problem? Why would there be any problems after defeating the boss?" Gigyu says, "The boss body disappeared so I couldn't be transported to the reward room." Tisik says, "What? So what did you do?" Gigyu says, "Well, I killed all of the remaining monsters." Tisik says, "So that's why you had so many crystals." Gigyu says, "Anyways, after I killed the last one, all the energy in the gate gathered in the boss room. After that we see a flashback where Lu says, "Master, hurry." Gigyu says, "I'm running as fast as I can." Gigyu says, "The scene that I saw then. How should I describe it? It was almost as if the world was breaking into pieces and being crumpled into one place." A yellow ball of energy appears on Gigyu's hand. A message popped up saying, "You have acquired an ego fragment. Will you go to the reward room?" Tisik says, "What are you talking about?" Gigyu says, "I think the gates might be egos." Tisik says, "I'll deposit the payment for the crystals, as well as the gate clear reward, to your bank account. It should come to around $50,000 in total." Gigyu says, "Thank you." Tisik says, "It's nothing. You're going straight to the hospital, right?" Gigyu says, "Yeah, I contacted her already, but I should go see her, since she's probably worried." Tisik bring out his car keys and says, "Get in. I'll give you a ride." Gigyu says, "I don't really wanna." Tisik says, "What's wrong with my baby? If you're a man, they going to the hospital in a pink car." Gigyu says, "You're gotta go pink. This is what it means to be a man." Tisik says, "This is what it means to be a man." His mother says, "All right, as long as you're not hurt. Go get Yujung a drink, to wake her up." Tisik is sitting with his mother. Gigyu says, "I'll be back. You two talk with each other." His mother says to Tisik, "Thank you for always taking care of Gigyu." Tisik says, "It's no problem. It's actually me who's getting all sorts of help from him." Gigyu says to his sister, "What are you sleeping for, when you just ate? It'll be exam season soon." She says, "I was taking a quick nap, so I could study." Gigyu says, "Don't work too hard. Take care of yourself. In that case, get me a charm of protection too." Gigyu says, "Watch it." An old lady come to them says, "Are you Yujung's older brother, young man?" She says, "Oh, Granny. How come you're not sleeping yet?" Granny says, "I came out to stretch my legs, and walked over when I heard your voice." Granny grabs Gigyu's hand and says, "I guess it's thanks to you, that Yujung is such a good kid." Gigyu laughs a little and says, "It's nothing." Granny says, "You're quite the energetic young man." He says, "Thank you." Granny starts to walk away and says, "Sorry to bother you two while you're on a walk." Gigyu says, "Not at all, take care." Yujung says, "See you tomorrow, Granny." Granny turns around says, "Young man. Several energies are in conflict with each other. Always be careful not to lose yourself. I hope you can fight through the coming adversities." Gigyu is confused and thinks, what does she mean? Could she know something? After that we see that the next days, Gigyu wakes up and says, "What a good sleep. This is like a hotel compared to the damp cave." One of the doctors says to Gigyu, "Are you the guardian of patient Sujin Lee?" Gigyu says, "Yes, what brings you here?" Doctor says, "Do you have some time to talk?" After that we see that in front of a gate a lot of players are gathered. One of them says, "I'm going home for the first time in 3 days. Wanna grab a drink after we wash up?" He says, "Maybe just a beer." Gigyu walked past them. He says, "Isn't that the tutorial slaughterer?" He says, "Oh. Where? I'm a fan. Should I go say hi?" He gets scared to see him. His friend asks him what is it. He says, "Well," his expression's a little. Gigyu is really angry. We see a flashback, where doctor says to him, the patient is in critical condition. Though she doesn't show it, her muscles are severely damaged. Her medical complications have also progressed significantly. I can tell that you've diligently taken care of her, but it's too late. Gigyu is standing in front of 2 really big minotaurs. Doctor says, and there's one last problem, which we don't know the cause of. Gigyu says, "A problem? What is it?" Doctor says, "I'm sorry, all I can tell you right now is that she has at best 1 year from now, at worst 3 months left." Gigyu is really sad and angry. He brings out his swords and jumps towards the minotaurs. Gigyu thinks, it's all my fault. If only I hadn't hesitated, putting my family before anything. If only I had gathered up more courage, earlier. If only I could have become stronger faster. Gigyu is standing inside the rain. Lu says, "Are you crazy? Do you have a death wish? It's time like these when you have to get your shit together." L says, "Watch your mouth." Lu, Master's mother is in critical condition. It's more than understandable that his hurt is suffering. We see on the 19th floor of the tower. He is carrying so many bags. All the others see him and talks about him. Someone says, "Hey, there. That looks a little heavy, need some help." All the other players see them and says, "What are they doing on the 19th floor?" The red player group, Spear Guild. One of them give an evil smile and says, "Let us carry some of that for you." Gigyu bring out his sword and put it against his neck and look toward him with an angry look. Red player says, "You bastard. Do you know who I am?" Gigyu says, "Shut up. Fuck off. And don't greed for other people's things." His eyes are burning with anger. Red player gets really scared and his legs starts to shake. He thinks, "What the? So much bloodlust." Someone comes running toward them and says, "What's going on over there?" Red player says, "Damn it, it's the association." They starts to run away saying, "I won't forget your face. Consider yourself lucky." Association member says, "What's going on?" Gigyu looks toward him. He introduces himself and says, "My name is Sunghun Heo. I'm security agent for the 19th floor, from the Korean Players Association. I'd like to ask for your cooperation for just a moment." Gigyu says, "It seems that red players had an eye on my bags." Agent says, "They're certainly large enough for me to understand why. Do you happen to be player Gigyu Kim, by any chance?" Gigyu says, "Just what did I do, for you to have placed a bounty on my head? By the way, the person who brought me here was called Sunghun Heo." T6 says, "Sunghun. I guess I'll have to double his bonus this month." Gigyu says, "What do you want?" T6 says, "What do you think? Did you really think that I would be looking for you, after 2 weeks with no contact in the tower?" Gigyu says, "Is that all?" T6 says, "Of course not. There's a way for your mother to recover." Gigyu is surprised to hear that. T6 says, "The only way to treat an illness with an unknown cause. You can presume what it is, right?" Gigyu says, "An elixir. An all-powerful potion that can cure any disease. But elixirs are." T6 says, "That's right. Only 3 elixirs have ever been found. One at the beginning stages of the tower's appearance, as a test reward by Marco Alonso, the first to clear the 50th floor. Gigyu says, "And the other 2 appeared as clear rewards and gates." T6 says, "You know more about this than I expected." Gigyu says, "I looked into it many times." T6 says, "Then I won't need to tell you, will I?" The connection between the 2 gates. Gigyu says, "The maze gates. This type of gate boasts a notorious level of difficulty, thanks to its wide distribution of monsters of various ranks, as well as a powerful keeper and frequent traps. But because they are classified as miscellaneous gates, separate from ranked gates, anyone can challenge them, as long as their identities are verified." T6 says, "2 days ago. The 3rd maze gate appeared in America." T6 says, "Wash up before you leave. Sujin would faint if she saw you like this. I'll cash in everything you brought and deposit the money without charging fees to your bank account. So leave you bags here." Gigyu says, "Thank you." And leaves. T6 says, "I'm feeling like picking up smoking again today." Gigyu is on the airport with Sunghun Heo. He says, "The department head told me that I should see everything through if I want my bonus, so, I've been put in charge of guiding you to the gate. The department head has taken care of all the document-related logistics. And all the necessary supplies have been prepared. We can depart right now, so please follow me." After that we see that on 20th floor. Gigyu passed the test, his skill Synchronize has evolved into Synchronize E. Gigyu sees that and thinks, skills with ranks aren't very common. Though I can still only use 35%, I can feel the body flowing with much more strength, compared to before the test. Agent says, "Player Gigyu Kim." Gigyu says, "Yes." Agent says, "It usually takes around a day to clear the 20th floor's test." Gigyu says, "Right. What about it?" Agent says, "Well, I hasn't even been 20 minutes since you went inside." "Never mind. Shall we get going then?" Gigyu says, "What time is our flight? I feel like I used up too much of our time." Agent says, "We won't be getting on a plane." Gigyu is confused. Agent says, "We're going to the 5th floor." Gigyu says, "The Maze Tower." Though it isn't common to meet players from different countries inside, due to separated regions. It was an undeniable truth that the tower was connected to the entire world. 5th floor Korean Hunter Association branch office. Gigyu says, an elevator inside the tower. Isn't it nearly impossible to get electricity here? How is this operated? Agent says, it's an artifact of sorts that powered by crystals. You can think of this entire building as an artifact. That's how important this place is. Gigyu thinks, just how much are they spending? They reach a big room with a lot of gates in it. It is called the International Transport Portal Management Center. Gigyu says, I never thought I'd be using an international transport portal. I heard that they're top secrets that are managed by the associations of each country. Agent says, not just anyone can use them. Department head Tisako is much more capable than you think. Agent says, here we are. Let's take a ride in the world's fastest vehicle, shall we? You look excited. Gigyu thinks, can this even be classified as a vehicle? Oh. After that we see that, Los Angeles, USA. Gigyu is reading a report riding in car. He says, there are high rankers who just announced their participation in this gate raid. USA's Iron Shield, Europe's Athena, and the Demon King of Korea. Gigyu thinks, will I be okay, among people like these? Agent says, we've arrived. This is the modern-day hell, that's appeared. The third maze gate, Hariwon's maze. Some says, Ball, you know what? Someone sees Gigyu and says, who's that? He looks Korean. I've never seen him before, either. They seem to be part of the association. He uses his ability on Gigyu. A girl with them says, what's wrong? He says, he's only level 1 with no stats, and he doesn't appear to have any unique abilities. She says, you can't even see it with you ability. He says, yes, I'm surprised, as this is a first for me, too. She removes her glasses and says, is that right? His face is my type, too. How interesting. After that we see that Gigyu is fighting with a really big spider. He says, Mr. Sunghoon now. Agent says, got it. Agent hits the spider with a spear. And kill. Gigyu says, good work. Is time for you to leave already? Agent says, yeah. 15 hours have passes already. If I consider the time taken to go back, it would be the best if I leave now. Gigyu shakes hand with him and says, thank you for everything so far. Thanks to Mr. Sunghoon, I was able to adapt quickly. Agent says, your growth speed was amazing. If you're thankful, treat me to a meal the next time around. Gigyu says, I'll make sure to do that. Have a safe journey. Agent says, I'll meet you back in Korea. He sprays some marks on the walls and says, okay. Looks like everything is cleared here. After that we see that there are a lot of spiders dead, and Gigyu says, a week has passed since Mr. Sunghoon went back. Now, I can take care of 3 giant spiders all at once without trouble. But getting used to one type of monster means that I'm becoming stagnant. If I want to get closer to the boss room, a strong monster needs to appear. Gigyu is holding a ball of string and says, what is this? Sunghoon says, it's the thread roll of Arachne. It's an item that allows you to return to the entrance of the gate once. It's a gift from director Taishiko. Along IWHT the words to run when you face a monster that's too strong. Gigyu thinks, don't save it, there's nothing more precious than your life. Well, I have no plans to use it until I get the elixir, even if I die. Gigyu hears a girl scream. He brings out his swords and says, did you hear? A girl's voice. Lu says, it's suspicious, master. It would be better to not go. Gigyu says, even if it's a trap, it doesn't hurt to check it out. It might end up being a bigger threat in the future as well. Lu says, that makes sense. L says, as master wishes. We see that a girl is tied with a tree. She says, somebody help me. Gigyu thinks, suspicious. Why is a young kid like that alone inside the gate? And she's Korean as well. Is it an illusion or a polymorph trap? This situation reminds me of a monkfish. Gigyu says, it would be the best if I just pretend that I didn't see that. There's one too many suspicious things about it. Lu says, what did I tell you? She says, Mom, sorry that I couldn't get you the hospital bills. Gigyu gets really angry. Lu says, Master, don't tell me. Isn't that such a plain line? Not even a 9-year-old will fall for that. Gigyu jumps towards her and saves her. Lu says, you idiot. They sit beside a wall and Gigyu says, you were accidentally separated from your party. She says, yes. While I was distracted for a second. Her name is Sujin Young. And she said that she gained a buff skill as her original talent. As long as someone gains a talent, even 10-year-old could become a player. But it's quite a tedious thing to have somebody underage to be in your party. However, it's worth it, as there are not many people who possess a buff-type talent, and an original one at that. Gigyu thinks, that's why they brought her to a dangerous place like this. He gives her something and says, it's a safe zone placement kit. It's not high-ranked so it only lasts for a day. But someone that's going to help you might appear during that time. She gets up and says, Uncle. He says, yes. She asks him that, can you take me along with you? He says, no. You should know this as well. But if you're a player, you are responsible for your own life. I can't help you any more than this. He thinks, and I'm not old enough to be called uncle. She grabs his arm and says, please. I'm quite good at supporting. I'll definitely be helpful. It's only been a while since I became a player so. My levels are low as well. Oh, I can't believe she said her level is low as. Well, that means she know that his level is 1. After that she says, and when I told them that I had something called original talent. I followed them because they said that they'll give me a lot of money if I followed them. He didn't get it. He says, my goal is to clear that gate. So I won't be going back. It's going to be dangerous for sure, and although we'll split the rewards, I can't give you the elixirs if they ever come out. She says, you're taking me along. He says, I'm saying this beforehand, but if you're not helpful, I'll hand you off to another party along the way. I'm not your guardian after all. She says, thank you. He thinks, it's because having a supporter is going to make hunting much easier. It's definitely not because she said her mother is sick, or because she reminds me of Yujun. Lu says, as if. After that we see that they are fighting a giant black ant. He says, Sunjung buff. She says, yes. He jumps with super speed and kills a lot of ants in one attack. He kills some more ants. A message popped up saying, Lu is absorbing the blood of the venom ant. Poison resistance is increasing. He thinks, it's been 2 weeks since I met Sujing. And the hunting has definitely become easier. She gets excited and says, Oppa, Oppa. My level increased again. Gigyu says, congrats. She says, it won't be long until I catch up to your level. Gigyu says, that would probably be impossible. Gigyu feels something and says, I just felt a presence. He sees them and thinks, that's the giant guild led by America's high ranker, Iron Shield. The Iron Guild. There are hundreds of players. In Iron Guild, Gigyu thinks, if he's a high ranker he must have felt my presence. I might be attacked if I get mistaken as a spy. I must quickly run. The wall break and a big sword stuck in the ground in front of him. Some says, Guild Master. Why did you throw the Kalyan? Gigyu and Sunjung are not there anymore. Guild Master says, it's nothing, seems like I made a wrong call. They reach a cave. She asks why are we running away? It's not like we did anything wrong. Gigyu says, we did do something wrong. It would be different if we met them normally, but we spied on them. Spy in CG can lead to a surprise attacks, so it's forbidden among players. But it's rare for anyone to suddenly attack like that out of nowhere. Oh well, the big guilds have lots of enemies. She says, what do we do now? Do we need to take the long way around to avoid them? Gigyu says, no, we're gonna follow them from a distance. It's actually a good thing, if you think about it differently. If we're taking the same path as a skilled party, it's more likely that we are taking the right path. She says, I see. They see a circle mark and Gigyu says, see, there's also a mark right there, aren't you glad we followed them? Since the Iron Guild killed all the monsters we don't have to fight, and there isn't any danger from traps either. Now we just need to find the boss room first. He says, Sujing, where did she go? L says, something is coming. Lu says, dodge you idiot. L says please dodge master. We see that guild master is standing behind him and says, found you. You little bastard. He smashes his head against the wall. Gigyu thinks, I can't lose. He gets unconscious. They hit him in face to wake him up and says, you've finally woken up. He grabs his head and says, who hired you? You little spy bastard. Gigyu says, shit, I don't know how to speak English. Spy. Does he know I was the one who spied on him? Guild Master says, who are you? How were you able to fool my senses? I'll kill you painlessly if you're honest. Gigyu says, kill. Please no kill. I'm not spy. Just hunting. Just hunting. Guildmaster says, you can't even speak English. Someone says, he could be acting. Guildmaster. Guildmaster says, well, we will see. Guildmaster says, Rogers. Rogers says, yes, Guildmaster. Gigyu sees Rogers and thinks, the named player who publicly announced he was joining the Iron Guild. Korean-American Rogers Han. Does he know that I'm Korean? Rogers sits in front of him and says, hello. You know me, right? I'm quite famous in Korea. I'll skip the introductions. Oh yay, I knew you were a Korean from this item that was in your luggage. Wow, everything here is so expensive. I apologize for the rough greeting. Our guild master isn't in the best mood right now. Gigyu thinks, he's being pretty friendly. Putting a translator on me means he wants to talk to me, right? Rogers says, so, why did you spy on us? What group are you associated with? How did you fool our guild master's senses? Gigyu says, a spy. This is all a misunderstanding. I just came here to hunt. And I'm a normal player who doesn't have any affiliations. And I didn't do anything as foolish as trying to fool his senses. I assumed you already knew I was there, so I thought you were fine with me. Rogers says, yes, I see. Rogers brings out a dagger and stabs him in his leg. Gigyu screams with pain. Rogers thinks, why is this guy so squishy? Rogers says, I don't know what led a loser like you here, but, you dare to try fooling us from the start. Rogers says, hunting. I'm sure you were after the elixir. Am I right? An old-looking guy says, what an unusual sword. I can't see a status window for this sword. And it's so dull unlike its appearance that it won't be able to cut through even the skin of an orc. Guildmaster says, we can just let he blacksmith handle it after we get back. Keep it for now. Old man says, yes, Guildmaster. Well, compared to you holy sword Kalyan. This is just a lump of metal. Rogers says, expensive potions heal very quickly, don't they? No matter how many times I stab you, you won't die. Don't make that face, I thought you were using these too frugally, so I'm just using them for you. Right. So hurry up and spill the beans, bastard. Whose dog are you? Gigyu says, I told you. I was lying that I was just hunting, but I really did come here alone. Rogers hits him in face and says, you think we're joking here? We already used inspection to inspect your stats before you woke up. Even the rope that's binding you isn't a special item. It's just a normal rope. Rogers, you think I can believe that someone who can't break free from normal ropes came here all by themselves? Do you think I'm an idiot or something? Guildmaster says, Rogers, come here. Continue after your meal. Rogers hits him in the stomach and starts to walk away and says, you better not start acting up, wise guy. Gigyu thinks I wouldn't get full of myself. I told myself that, over and over. I realized that I was lacking in May areas after sparring with Taeshik. Conquering the maze-style gate, which I have almost 0% chance in clearing. Although I knew it was nearly impossible. I couldn't get rid of the thought, that just maybe I could do it. But all I had to trust in, was some borrowed power. They simply took away weapons. And I become this powerless. We see that someone is watching him from the distance. She says, the distance is approximately 2 kilometers. We will most likely be scouting near the checkpoint for a while. She asks a masked woman, what will you do? After that we see that Gigyu thinks, fingers and toes severed 27 times. Bones crushed 63 times. Puncture wounds and cuts suffered 121 times. And counts of typical abuse lost, at around 200 times. We see that Gigyu is sitting inside his own pool of blood. He thinks, it's been 4 days, since I was captured by the Iron Guild. Rogers says, he's a stubborn one. If he were just a little bit more talented, I might have scouted him from my end. Guildmaster says, Bruce, go bring this man's sword. Bruce says, both of them, sir. Guildmaster says, just one is fine. I thought about melting and recycling them, but I changed my mind. A man like him deserves to be shown my sincerity. I will kill you with your own sword, myself. You sorrowful soldiers can act as your tombstone as you are buried along with a gate that'll go down in history. Quite an honorable death for a player, no? They bring out Lu. Guild Master says, I'll send you off neatly. Guild Master touch him with his sword. The system says, your link with Ego Lu has been re-established. Gigyu opens his eyes, an epic look on his face. And break the ropes. Grabs his sword. And attacks the Guild Master. All his guild member are surprised. Guild Master grabs his sword with his hands. Guild Master says, so you've been hiding your strength. No wonder. I thought I could feel the Demon King's energy. I'm not surprised she took an interest in you. It seems like she used you as plaything. Gigyu thinks, he won't even budge. Guild Master says, but how do you manage to trick the detection? That shouldn't be possible, even for the Demon King. I'll have to get more information out of you, still. Gigyu says, now that it's come to this, it seems I don't have any choice but to use that, do I? Masked Woman says, commence attack. An arrow hits the Guild Masters. Guild Master sees that and thinks, an arrow of Artemis. He says, Athena. Masked Woman says, correct. Long time no see, Iron Shield. He breaks the arrow and says, is it safe for me to assume this is a declaration of war against the Iron Guild? She says, your sense of humor has improved, Iron Shield. Has there even been a time when we weren't at war? She throws her spear with so much that it creates a sonic boom. Guild Master bring out his holy sword and use a defense skill. A huge explosion happens. Guild Master sighs, Rogers. Leave the spy alive, and keep him restrained. Rugers says, yes, sir. Guild Master says, we'll put an end to this today, once and for all. All troops prepare for battle. A war starts. Rogers is standing in front of Gigyu. And says, I'm getting chills just listening to them. They're really monsters. Sometime I wonder whether they're actually gods, fighting each other. Don't you agree? Gigyu is standing there ready to fight, injured, and tired. Rogers says, it seems like standing up's the most you can do. Our guild master told us to keep you alive, but it wouldn't be weird at all if I told him I accidentally killed him, while he was on the brink of death, would it? Rogers disappears in front of his eyes. And appears behind him. And says, I can't let you live after you've seen my true self after all. Rogers swings his sword as his sword is about to hit Gigyu in the neck. He says, now reflect. System says, reflecting damage accumulated by Brunhart. A huge explosion happens and Rogers is on the brink of death. System says, Brunhart has reached its maximum accumulation limit. Brunhart is disintegrating. Gigyu goes closer to him ready to stab him. Rogers says, wait, spear me. Gigyu stabs him in neck. And falls to the ground himself. Gigyu says, the damage isn't fatal since I accessorized Lu when I was stabbed by Iron Shield, but the after effect of reflect was too significant. It won't stop bleeding. Is this as far as I go? That girl comes to him and says, Oppa. Are you alright? He says, Yujun. She says, what are you talking about? Oppa, I'm Sujing. She says, hey, Oppa. If I save you, and I get you an elixir, what can you do for me? Can you give up your life to me? Or can you live your entire life as my slave? Do you think you can really do any of that? He says, one more thing. So I can kill Iron Shield. And I can destroy the Iron Guild. She says, doesn't that make it two more? Didn't you just say one more thing? Anyways, do we have an agreement? He says, and my sword. From the middle-aged man with a white mustache. She says, how many extra conditions are you adding? A man comes there and says, he certainly is an interesting person. She says, right, even more so after observing him closer. From just the looks he is good-natured but is actually evil-natured. I sighed. Someone suppressed his true nature. She points towards the Rogers and says, did you see when he stabbed that idiot? It isn't something that you can do out of anger. He went directly for the vitals. It seems like it was his first time killing someone and yet he did it cold-heartedly. Without even a hint of hesitation. He says, what will you do with that man? It seems to be a fatal wound, but he does have quite a high level. And so he will recover if we leave him like that. She says, we'll just leave him. If he does recover he was meant to be. And I'm sure it would be preferable for us to let him live. Revenge becomes sweeter the longer it prolongs. Her hair color change and she says, the coming of the Demon King. He says, is it? She says, be quiet. Name like that are made up by people who don't know what they're talking about. She become a young woman. She says, I'm the person who will kill the Demon King. We see a cube and Gigyu thinks this is. Now I remember. This is inside my drams. Gigyu is trapped inside the cube. He thinks the nightmare that hunted me for the last 5 years. It went away after I met Lu. He grabs a rope and says this is a bucket. I see how it is. Even after getting over a wall, I'm still stuck in the well I was originally in. Now even my dreams are mocking me. Of course, I was simply lucky enough to grab the rope that drew me up. It wasn't even with my strength that I was drawn up. That's all there is to it. We see Lu is standing behind Gigyu who says, what a loser, how long will you complain that your link was broken this one time? Power that was borrowed. What's different about the others? Whether they earned it through effort or were simply just lucky. As long you have it, it is your power you loser. Gigyu says, who? L also appears there and says, he is right master. My power belongs to my master. Please do not despair. He suddenly wakes up. The man with him says, oh, have you come to your senses? Gigyu says, who is this? Sujing. No. He thinks is he someone related to the Demon King. That man says, your recovered sword is next to you. The think L, Lu. L says, master. Lu says, you finally woke up. That man says, and please rest for a bit longer. Although we healed you wounds with potions, you should not move too much. You are currently endangered in many ways. The land starts to shake. The girl activates some king of big magic. He sees that and says, what is that? That man says, the demon commander. I believe it's the first time you see it. He asks, demon commander. That man says, that is the owner of this maze. A huge really huge monster made of fire, with an iron armor appears in front of them. Demon commander, Hariwan. Gigyu sees him and gets really afraid and says, that's the gatekeeper. That man says, well, you're not wrong. Gigyu thinks, is he saying I have to fight that thing? She is floating in front Demon Commander, Hariwan. She smiles. Demon Commander activates his skill, and huge gate appears behind him. Gigyu is surprised to see that and says, a gate? How in the world? That man says to Gigyu, come here. If you get distracted, you'll die. Please stand behind me. Gigyu is still confused. He throws down a drop of blood. They get surrounded by blood. Gigyu says, is this a barrier? He says, correct. It seems you're quite well informed. A lot of monsters starts to come out of the gate. They all surround her. She uses her unique ability Ink Flame. A really big black sword appears in front of her. Gigyu thinks of Roger's saying, sometimes I wonder whether they're actually gods, fighting each other. She hit the demon commander with her sword. A huge and long crater appears at the place of fight. Gigyu goes to the reward room. He gets the elixir. Lu says, in the end, I got it. L says, congratulations, master. Gigyu thinks I really did it. I don't know if it's because I've been doing all this hectic work lately, but I guess I could say I don't have a sense of reality. He thinks, I'm more frustrated than happy. She says, I kept my promise with this. Technically speaking, there is still more revenge you have to do. But you don't expect me to help you out with everything, right? Gigyu says, is your real name Sujing? She says, yep, Young Sujing. I'm also Korean. She says, okay nice, mine is also an elixir. What about Ball? Ball says, mine's an elixir as well. She give her elixir to Gigyu and says, here, keep this. Gigyu says, why are you? She says, helping you take revenge on the Iron Guild. That was one of the conditions, wasn't it? Think of this as a part of my job. Your body's not in a good condition right now. You still have parts of your body that have not been healed by potions. This will fix you the rest of your body. Our goal in the first place was not the elixir but becoming a commander. Plus, I already have another one, so just take it. Think of this as my investment into the contract. Gigyu takes the elixir and thinks, no. I won't compare myself to anyone any longer. I just need to grow stronger myself. And for some reason, I feel like if I keep moping like this, Lu's gonna have a lot to say. Lu says, I'm glad you are aware. Gigyu says to her, still, there's no way you would give me something so good without wanting anything in return. Is there something you want from me? You don't want me to become your lifetime slave or anything, right? She says, nothing like that. She says, disciple. I want you to become my disciple. Gigyu says, what? She says, don't what me. You're useless now because you're weak, but when you pass the 50th floor, come look for me. Then I'll start taking care of you seriously. She do something with his eye. She says, this is evidence of the contract's existence. As of right now, you don't have any skills or abilities. But I don't want to go around making assumptions. Try to learn as much as you can. Right. Come to think of it. I took a look earlier, and the swords you have are pretty unique. There's still some time left until the gate closes. I'll tell you a way to strengthen one of your swords. Gigyu is still confused. She says, but first, drink the elixir I gave you. It's a pretty risky method, so you need to be very prepared. This is your first lesson, my disciple. Gigyu is standing his sword in his hands are shaking. L says, Master, that woman is definitively dangerous. Do not trust her. Lu says, you've lost your mind. He is standing in front of Guildmaster ready to fight. And thinking, what am I doing right now? She is also standing right behind him. Guildmaster says, you demon, this was you doing again. Damn you. To think that you would steal the boss while we weren't looking. She says, it wasn't even yours in the first place. First come, first serve. She says, good luck, my disciple. Hurry up and do it the way I taught you to. Gigyu thinks, is she actually just a DM? Gigyu says, hey, Iron Shield. I will kill you. Guildmaster sees toward him with a really angry look and evil smile. Gigyu thinks, I'm screwed. He jumps toward Gigyu, with super speed and says, you've changed. Have you become the demon's subordinate? Or have you always been one? Well, it doesn't matter, either way, I'll have to kill you here. After that we see a flashback where Gigyu drinks the elixir. A message popped up saying, you are being fixed. Gigyu says, there's no much a change. She says, of course. The thing that's changing are your abilities. And latent powers. The changes in your body will be small for now. That small difference can determine a player's life or death. For now, the most noticeable change is watching and reacting. He dodges Guildmaster's attack at the very last moment. Gigyu thinks, to put it simply, my senses have increased. I dodged it. Those moves that were new to me. I'm now able to see them little by little. She says, congratulations. You're one step closer to becoming a high ranker. He thinks, it was just as the Demon King said. She says, that doesn't mean you can fight with the Iron Guild as of now, got it? A newbie that's just stated taking its steps can't compare to the experienced ones. Even if you manage to fluke, the most you could probably do is avoid an attack. You know, there's that saying, you don't use the knife to catch a cow to catch a chicken. Gigyu sees toward Guildmaster and thinks, it isn't ignorance. He's relaxed because he knows he's strong. Guildmaster says, are you actually won? She says, and even with just one battle, he'll be able to figure out the situation. Your growth and my contact elixir. There's no shortage of clues. Guildmaster says, so that's how it is. She says, those who have caught on will attack more sincerely. Guildmaster activates the power of the Holy Sword Kalyan. And jumps toward Gigyu with full speed. She says, don't be intimidated. Just go. He blocks Guildmaster's attack with L. System says, the Lord of the Holy Sword L has awakened his ability. It is absorbing the powers of the Holy Sword Kalyan. Since the level of the owner is low, only a fraction of power will be absorbed. Absorption is complete. Gigyu thinks, using the moment of embarrassment he felt from me blocking what he thought was an unblockable attack. And using the sense of demotivation he felt when I stole some of his sword's power, all in order to increase the distance. He jumps backward, and then to finish it off, he uses Arachne's web to escape the gate. Guildmaster sees that and gets really and jumps toward him and says, did you think I would miss? Gigyu smiles with his middle finger high. Guildmaster misses him and screams with anger. Demon King says to Iron Shield, then, shall we have a chat? Iron Shield. Iron Shield says, damn it. We see that Gigyu out of the gate and agent is here to pick him up. Gigyu says, Sunghoon helped me being my mother home, too. I couldn't give my mother the elixir at the hospital after all. Gigyu is talking with Taeshik and Taeshik says, yes. Please, let me know when you come to Korea. Gigyu says, I'll see you soon then, Taeshik. Gigyu says thanks to Sunghoon. Sunghoon says, now, I'll get going, then. Gigyu says, yes, take care. After we that her mother condition is very bad, she opens her eyes slowly and says, Gigyu, is that you? He says, yes, mom. It's me. Are you alright? She says, son, I wanted to see you one last time before I die. I just really wanted to see you once before I die. Thank you, son. Gigyu says, don't worry, mom. Everything's going to be okay, now. She says, there's something I've always wanted to tell you, son. Gigyu, you're actually. She starts to scream with pain. Gigyu says, mom, just hold on a moment. He opened the elixir and give to her. Gigyu falls to ground unconscious saying, it's all okay. Now. L says, master. Lu says, I'm not surprised. He's gone through so much in one day. L says, is it fine, the way things are? I have a feeling it'll be dangerous to get more involved with her. Lu says, well, there's nothing we can do about it. Let's just let him rest for now. After a while we see that his mother is glowing purple and opens her eyes.